Hello, everybody. Thank
Hi,
you
guys.
guys so much for coming out today to Atlanta Against Cancer. Let's get a huge round of applause for Ayo for putting this
Yes.
together.
I cannot believe what
This
he did in
is,
such a short time.
it's
First
beyond
annual.
amazing. All right. Our speech today is titled, How Cancer Became a Four-Letter Word. My name is Michael Cramer.
Hi, I'm Michael's mom. I'm Ashlee. And we have an unconventional journey, which is why you get a 2 for the price of 1 today. We actually want to start with a question for you guys that are listening.
What are some four-letter words that you might associate with the word cancer?
And you can shout it out.
Anybody?
Anybody?
Shit?
Shh,
Okay.
Can we curse?
Okay.
Yes.
I
What
feel
else?
that,
What
I
else?
feel
What
that.
else? A 4-letter word for cancer. Oh, you go for it, girl. No, I can't. She can't. I think it might start with an
Hate?
F.
Hate? Okay.
Okay. What else? Yeah. And
Yes,
what else?
agreeable.
What else?
Agree.
Darn, I don't know.
Darn.
Okay,
Okay.
that was the good version. All right, Wanchi.
Juanchi, what do you think?
Love?
Oh my
Love.
God! Wow. Actually, he hit it.
You hit the
Okay,
jackpot.
so for Michael and I, there is one 4-letter word that comes to mind above all others.
And that word is love. Love.
Stole my
Love.
line. I'll take it though.
I was a surfer, a windsurfer. I was on the Olympic development team for windsurfing, and I was a student in college before I was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of lymphoma. Around March of 2020, the COVID lockdown had hit us in Miami pretty hard. I was tired and I was down, and we blamed it on the COVID lockdown. I thought maybe I had COVID, in fact, but for a few months this dragged on. And around July, I started that I had really bad night sweats. I started to develop some fevers. You know, I thought maybe I was anemic, maybe I had COVID. We couldn't really figure it out or pinpoint it to anything. So we went to our family pediatrician. I did some blood work, and a few days later, she called us. She told us we needed to go to Nicholas Children's Hospital to meet with a blood specialist who will review my labs and tell us what the next thing to do is. We went to Nicholas Children's Hospital immediately, and we met with the doctor. He did some blood work, and it came back a little funky. He was not too happy with it, so he wanted to do a bone marrow biopsy. And at the time, I had no idea what a bone marrow biopsy really was, why he was doing it. We weren't thinking anything. I thought I was anemic. I thought maybe I had COVID. And we came in the next day for the bone marrow biopsy, and I remember the only thing I was nervous for was going under anesthesia and getting a procedure done. I get the bone marrow biopsy. I wake up from the anesthesia, groggy, in the recovery room in the infusion unit at Nicholas Children's Hospital. And the doctor, the very kind doctor, Dr. Dangulo, who I met the day before, walks in and he tells me, what you have is treatable. You have a form of leukemia/lymphoma. And my heart just dropped. 4 years prior to this, I lost my father, lymphoma. So hearing those words again, it was beyond devastating. It was heartbreaking. And immediately I was transported to the 6th floor of the hospital. I had a port placed in the next day to start chemotherapy, and we were admitted to the hospital, my mom and I. For a week, I received countless blood transfusions. I had the residents coming in, touching my feet, trying to figure out my exact diagnosis, but we went home after a week with no official diagnosis. And 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with Hepatosplenic T-Cell Lymphoma, a cancer with a 15% chance of survival and an 8-month prognosis. My doctor told me I had to go through 2 to 6 rounds of chemotherapy and a bone marrow transplant if I wanted any chance of survival. It was very tough news. It was very, very hard to deal with it. I was 19 years old. I was in the best shape of my life. I was at the peak of my life. I was in college. I was athletic. I was young. I had this bright future ahead of me, and here I was receiving a cancer diagnosis at 19. I went through 3 rounds of very, very intense chemotherapy. Lost my hair, my muscle, pretty much everything except for my family, my friends, and those around me, and the ones that I love. And on October 19th, 2020, I was admitted to Nicholas Children's Hospital for my bone marrow transplant. I had a 10 out of 10 match, an unrelated donor from Germany. This amazing guy who donated his stem cells just for me to save my life. And on October 27th of 2020, I had my bone marrow transplant. It was the hardest time of my life. We were admitted for 6 straight weeks to the hospital, my mom and I. I was prepped with 12 sessions of radiation, total body radiation, lung blasts, and the most intense chemotherapy you could possibly give a human to wipe out my old bone marrow and leave room for the donor stem cells to become mine and save my life, putting my cancer into remission. But those 6 weeks were much more than that. I had so much pain because of the chemotherapy and radiation that I had a PCA pump for morphine. 24/7 I was on morphine. I vomited over 30 times. I popped blood vessels in my eyes. I almost even passed away one night from a syndrome called engraftment syndrome. I had such severe hallucinations that I would ask my mom, why is my grandpa in the room? And he wasn't even there. Those 6 weeks were physically the most challenging 6 weeks of my life, but the next 2 years were the hardest times of my life mentally. After we went home from the bone marrow transplant, we ended up right back in the hospital. I developed a very rare condition known as graft versus host disease. The donor stem cells for my transplant were attacking my body. They was rejecting it. It happened in my skin, my liver, and my GI. My mom and I, we spent 5 straight months in the hospital. I had a drain in my liver, a drain in my gallbladder. I was yellow, my liver was failing, and I was basically dying. I had so much pain, and I was on pain meds, morphine, Dilaudid, almost every single pain med you could imagine. But there was nothing that helped the mental pain. It was such a difficult journey this time. And the only one thing that got me through everything was our 4-letter word. Love. Love. It was love that had brought us here today to share this story. It was love that kept us going. It was nurses, it was a doctor, it was my brother, it was my sister, it was my grandma, it was my friends who showed up and picked me up when I was down and wanted to give up. It was the people around us who made it possible, and it really wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for the love we had in our life. That is why we are here today.
And this is going to sound unbelievable, kind of like a movie, but the cancer journey, as Michael said, it didn't start with Michael's cancer. I was married, and we had 3 beautiful children, Stephen, Michael, and Jennifer. Michael would be the middle kid, of course. And I had a beautiful, flourishing career. I had a wonderful family. And then in 2014, it was the first time that my world came to a stop because of cancer. My husband was diagnosed with large B-cell lymphoma. It is a, quote, treatable cancer. But 17 months after he was diagnosed, he died. He was at home. We were with him. He was in hospice. The 3 children and I, we were holding him and we were hugging him and telling him how much we loved him when he took his last breath. In 2020, when Michael was feeling tired, cancer was the furthest thing from my mind. It didn't even cross into my head. He was young, he was athletic, he was healthy. I really thought maybe he was anemic because I'm guilty of being a vegan mom. So I thought I wasn't giving my 19-year-old enough protein, enough red meat. I added almonds and dark chocolate to his diets. But then when he started getting fevers and night sweats, we knew it was more serious. And as he said, we thought it was COVID. He went in for a blood test. It led to the bone marrow biopsy and the diagnosis of hepatosplenic T-Cell Lymphoma. I had never heard of it, and neither had most of his doctors. It's a mouthful to say, even harder to spell. And his oncologist asked us not to Google it. We did not. And later we found out why. Michael had a slim chance of surviving more than 8 months. He was a teenager. He had nothing ahead of him but time until that day. But here we are together in front of you sharing our message of love. So I became Michael's caregiver 24/7. It was a no-brainer. It became my mission, it became my purpose, and it still is my purpose today. When Patrice was first diagnosed and he was sick, I think I kept the story very private. It was our own personal pain. And I wanted to protect my 3 young children from questions and kind, well-intentioned people. But when Michael was diagnosed and he lost his hair immediately, I have to take a drink of water. I'm getting emotional. When Michael lost his hair immediately, his friends and his brother, in a show of unison, they shaved their heads with Michael. Like a good mom, I took a video and I did post it on Instagram. The outpouring of love from that one video, I think it set the tone for the last 2.5, 3 years. And little by little, very organically, we began sharing the story on Instagram, then on TikTok, and then we started our podcast, Michael and Mom Talk Cancer. We have done crazy things like make up raps about our hospital journey. We have named and bedazzled the drains that have been in his liver, his stomach, his gallbladder. We have had dance parties in the hospital room with doctors and nurses and residents. And it has been so inspiring to see the impact of one 22-year-old kid and his very humbled mom. Because the truth is, the story has never been just about us. The story has been about the people who have been there for us. The people like you that have lifted us up, that have loved us no matter what we have been going through. And sharing our story, it's been like sharing a love story. Sometimes dramatic, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes humorous, but always real, always relevant, and always beautiful. Love is the reason that we are here today. Love is what has lifted us up. Love is what has saved us. And we believe love is what makes the magic and the miracles happen.
Love is not a drug, not a chemotherapy, it's not a medication, but it has been our best treatment and our best medication. And we just have to say, we love you guys.
We love you for coming today.
We love you so much. Thank you guys for listening and being here today and making this event possible.
And don't forget to love the ones you're with. Love them, love them.
Don't forget
love
to tell
them,
anyone
love
you
them.
love that you love them because life is short.
And you don't know.
You just never